Good evening and welcome to the Politics As Usual Yearender, a 2022 political plot twist. Well, what do you know? Who would have guessed 2022 was just full of, brimming to the rim with political plot twists many didn't see and didn't prepare for, or perhaps more correctly, didn't want to see and didn't want to prepare for. But hold on a minute, notice anything about the title of this special? Political plot twist, and the show's name is Politics As Usual. Keywords: plot twist and as usual in one sentence. Do they cancel each other out, or do they go together? This is Politics As Usual, your weekly political appointment fix, and I'm your host, Pia Hontiveros. There is no bigger political plot twist than another Marcos becoming president, a consistent survey frontrunner from start to finish, in spite of the fact that he avoided media interviews and presidential debates like the plague. Ito na po ang pagkakataon ninyo to compare them side by side. We will find out who is fitting, ready, and deserving to be the next Commander-in-Chief.
And it's time to bring them in. Here are your candidates for President of the Republic of the Philippines.
But Marcos stayed on message. Unity, 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 he said over and over again. And no matter what the yellow-turned-pink forces threw at him, estate taxes, disqualification cases, his father's dictatorship, and human rights violations record, not a dent, not a scratch. The ultimate Teflon candidate. If Leni Robredo beat Bongbong Marcos in the 2016 race for the vice presidency, the opposition was setting this last election to be a rematch between them. Do you think, or should he be disqualified, or do you want him disqualified? Because many of those who believe in you and will vote for you want him disqualified for reasons that were used to file those DQ cases against him, or the petitions to cancel his COC. Or do you want to slug it out with him?
Ako Pia, ayoko mag-comment sa disqualification case, but if you were to ask me, mas gusto ko talunin natin siya sa eleksyon para matapos na ito.
But could she have topped his 31 million plus votes for the 2022 race for the presidency? Well, it was not even close. So on election night, were we really surprised that he was leading the partial unofficial count from start to finish? Bongbong Marcos has mounted a very huge lead over Leni Robredo. Marcos has 23,552,103 votes. The canvassing by a joint session of Congress that would take place some 2 weeks later, in keeping with the Constitution, echoed the election night results. And it has come to this. Ferdinand Romualdez Marcos Jr., or Bongbong, or Bonget to family, was proclaimed the winner of the presidential race by a joint session of Congress.
I proclaim Ferdinand Romualdez Marcos Jr. as the duly elected President of the Republic of the Philippines.
Pray for me. Wish me well. I want to do well, because when a president does well, the country does well. And I want to do well for this country.
So from that point on, until the time he took his oath, Bongbong Marcos, son, namesake, junior of his father, became president-elect until his inaugural on the 30th of June. The moment Ferdinand Romualdez Marcos Jr. takes his oath as the 17th President of the Philippines at high noon today, he is no longer just President-elect. He will be addressed as President Marcos, something those who worked so hard to depose his father in February 1986 never saw coming.
I fully understand the gravity of the responsibility that you've put on my shoulders. I do not take it lightly, but I am ready for the task. I will need your help. Your dreams are mine. Pangarap nyo ay pangarap ko. And if you ask me why I am so confident of the future, I will answer you simply that I have 110 million reasons to start with. Such is my faith in the Filipino.
After the inaugural, Marcos returns to Malacanang and takes ceremonial possession of it. It is a tradition begun by Manuel L. Quezon as it symbolized how the country took back power from its former Spanish colonizers. The irony and the impact of the images were not lost on anyone. A Marcos is back in Malacanang. This Politics As Usual Year-ender will be right back. July 1, 2022, the day after Bongbong Marcos's inauguration, is his first full day as president. And from that day onward, he knows he needs to buckle down to work. And he starts to do what his predecessor didn't always do, show up. In early morning flag ceremonies, for example. And in a single day, makes appearances in the headquarters of the National Police for its anniversary in the morning, and in the headquarters of the armed forces to oversee a change of command ceremony in the afternoon. It is, of course, expected of a commander-in-chief, but these are the homes of the two institutions that helped remove his father from office. And surprise, surprise, he does press conferences and entertains questions in ambush interviews, presides over cabinet meetings, and also over controversy, a sugar crisis, a food crisis, and so on.
Even for critics, this is more like jumping from fire to the frying pan. And to be even more fair to the new president is that, let's take it a day at a time and then assess how it goes. And accordingly, if there's something good done, let's give credit where credit's due. If something is not done well, whether you voted for him or not, you call it out. That's how being a good citizen is all about. And let's try to do that and stick to the course. Yeah.
I think it's too early to judge President Marcos. All this criticism against him are not as important as whether he steers the country well, and that requires really reading your briefing notes, listening to your cabinet, and I hope he does perform for the sake of the country.
To be sure, Mr. Marcos has his work cut out for him. To this day, there is as yet no health secretary and no agriculture secretary, as the president holds the portfolio in a concurrent capacity. His appointment of a former chief of the Philippine National Police as a health undersecretary did raise eyebrows, though.
No.
You have the no, definitely not.
For me it's I would want to correct also Dr. Jean, of course. I will not run the DOH, as he said. I
You are
think she
running
mentioned
the FICT for Visayas.
Yes.
So.
And I am a member of the DOH team. A new member of the DOH team who is willing to learn. At the same time, I just hope that they could also learn from me. But of course, this one is DOH. I will learn much more from them, and I would be trying my best to actually help out.
And he still has to deal with his Maharlika Investment Fund controversy. Well, much has happened in government, comings and goings, beginning with Mr. Marcos's executive secretary, the president's bout with COVID in early July, and an opposition alive and well, although a very tiny minority, in both the Senate and the House of Representatives, before which, in a joint session, President Marcos delivers his first State of the Nation address.
We will endure. Let our Filipino spirit ever remain undimmed. I know this in my mind. I know it in my heart. I know it in my very soul. The state of the nation is sound.
Bongbong Marcos has only been president for a month when a former president dies. But this is not just any former president. It is Fidel V. Ramos, whose withdrawal of support from his father during the 1986 EDSA revolt helped bring down the 21-year reign of the elder Marcos. Still, the 6 years that FVR was president saw many leaps forward for the country. Rest well, Mr. President. Thank you for your service. Our snappiest salute. When leaders die, whether they held real power or were mere figureheads, the impact of their life and death is brought into sharp focus. Britain's Queen Elizabeth II, 70 years on the throne, died at the age of 96. The moment she passed, the crown passed to her heir, Charles. Elizabeth's funeral was, as everything else that is British, full of pomp and pageantry, a reminder of what once was Britain's place in the world. Still, for a world power has been, Britain proved it is not. What with 500 dignitaries, including 100 heads of state, attending Elizabeth's funeral. King Charles III's coronation will be held in May. Shinzo Abe, former Japanese prime minister, assassinated in Nara Prefecture while campaigning. Mikhail Gorbachev died after a long illness. He was the last Soviet leader who opened the USSR to the world, the forerunner of what is Russia today, that 10 months ago in February began a campaign to try and redraw the map of the world by invading Ukraine. Its president, Volodymyr Zelensky, put up a brave resistance. Vladimir Putin has no plans to withdraw from Ukraine. Jiang Zemin, president of the People's Republic of China from 1998 to 2003, died at the age of 96. Like Russia, present-day China has no plans of withdrawing either from the West Philippine Sea, which Beijing says is theirs and everything in it, and that's why their Coast Guard confiscated rocket debris that a Philippine Navy rubber boat was hauling. President Marcos is visiting China in January, but he spent a good part of the last few months attending both APEC and ASEAN summits, made an appearance at the United Nations General Assembly, and went on a working visit to the United States where he met U.S. President Joe Biden, a pivot to try and rebuild relations with other countries that were frayed by the previous administration. This is the Politics As Usual Yearender. Be right back. A senator has been in jail since 2017 on drug charges. When Bongbong Marcos became president, calls resounded for the release of Laila de Lima, given that testimonies against her were recanted and allegations against her taken back. In the early hours of the morning of October 9, 3 Abu Sayyaf detainees in the same facility tried to escape. 2 of them were killed, 1 hostage de Lima, and held an ice pick to her chest. Later that morning, DILG Secretary Benher Abalos, upon instructions from President Marcos, called him by telephone so that he could speak to the senator. The senator has been one of the more bitter critics of the president.
Sabi raw ni President Bongbong, so totoo pa lang na hostage ka after Senator Laila gave her narrative sa ng insidente. So that's yung sumunod na yung, so tell me what you want para siguro matulungan siya. At it was a casual phone call. Senator Laila de Lima, we have to understand mga sandaling yun, medyo traumatized pa rin, so hindi pa masyado nakapagsalita ng maayos.
As head of the executive branch of government, the president cannot dictate how a case is tried in court, but he can ask prosecutors not to object or cause delay. De Lima ran for re-election but lost in May. She is still in jail. Her lawyers hope she will not be there for long. A radio broadcaster was shot and killed just as he was heading home. The gunman surrendered to police. His testimony that officials of the New Bilibid prison were allegedly involved in an elaborate plot to silence Percy Lapid for good. Charges have since been filed.
Yes po, ma'am. Meron pong nag-deposit sa kanyang bank account.
Pumunta ng bangko.
Pumunta na ang bangko po at doon nag-deposit po sa bank account ni
Okay.
Escorial. Meron pa siya actually revelation kaya pinagtatagpi-tagpi natin itong kwento na ito dahil yung dalawang suspect pa na kasama niya is meron pa din silang contact din na nandun sa loob. At itong contact na nandun sa loob, ito rin yung mayroon ding pangalan na naibigay pero yun nga the same alias din. Kaya ito medyo nahihirapan, napapasal pa itong mga investigators natin kung how we're going to patch up itong mga information na binibigyan ng kuan.
And as if the Justice Department didn't have enough on its hands, the 38-year-old son of the Justice Secretary was arrested in a drug operation. Calls for Boying Remulla to step down went unheeded. And we haven't even talked about the COVID-19 pandemic, not just how the world has been changed forever, but how it tries to craft a braver and newer and better version of itself. So yes, the plot twists, political and otherwise, of 2022 still do fit right into politics as usual. And there most probably will be more of them, the plot twists, in 2023. And we can talk about them here at this table, on this show, your weekly political appointment fix, Politics as Usual. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pia Hontiveros. See you next year, next Wednesday, January 4, 2023 at 8 p.m.